Well, very good morning to you. Welcome to the broadcast. You're watching Morning Express. It's always a pleasure to get to start your day in style. And this time round, we're just about to usher in the weekend, but it has been a busy week. The Super Tuesday fell in this particular week. So far, we've seen 41 counties give a nod to the Constitutional Amendment Bill 2020. What next? That's the big question, even as Parliament speakers do prepare for the next process, which falls in the two houses. That's the National Assembly and the Senate. We'll definitely get to deliberate this as we take a look at what has transpired politically over the week. The NASA fallout, and we definitely anticipate a lot to happen, even as the ODM party has just extended its deadline for the presidential candidates to submit their nomination papers right there. We'll definitely keep you updated on that and much more. My well-able panelists, allow me to introduce them already in studio. Kasim Tandaza, Member of Parliament for Matuga constituency. Good morning.
Good morning, viewers. Good morning, Rogers.
Okay, it's great to have you. Also joined by Professor Gitile Naituli, the former NCIC Commissioner. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning to your viewers.
All right. Well, I think we should start directly with the locals this time round. And of course, the front page is centered on the latest developments touching on the referendum bill 2020. And of course, we saw various party leaders conglomerate at State House in a show of might. What Uhuru, Raila told party leaders. That's on the front page of the Standard, even as the Daily Nation has sort of the same story on the front page. Big split in Ruto camp over BBI. And after BBI victory, the leaders are launching countrywide tours. It's a sort of a victory lap. A referendum on the BBI bill could be held in May. It emerged after President Kenyatta hosted political leaders for nearly 4 hours at State House. The leaders planned countrywide engagements to sensitize the public on the document. Gentlemen, we'll get to discuss this in totality later on, but I'd like your quick reaction. I'll start with you, Professor. A show of might yesterday, various party leaders, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 party leaders right there, excluding President Uhuru Kenyatta. What do you make of this?
This is politics in the making. I think the passing of the BBI by the counties, I don't think that was in doubt at all. I think we have said that before.
You're on record, yes.
That was just a question of time. And even the passing by the public, if it goes to the referendum, is not also in doubt. But I think the taste of this pudding will be in the eating in 2022. I think if the economy doesn't turn around in 2022, this may very well turn out to be a very hollow victory, finally.
Okay. So in the long run, it might have a couple of negative effects. Let's cross over to Kasim Tandaza. What's the political consequence of the passing of the BBI bill in the counties? Is this a true representation of the sentiments on the ground, from your take?
Indeed, it is a true representation. And it would have been surprising if, for some reason or another, a majority of the counties would have voted no. There wouldn't have been any logic at all, given that the counties are a creation of our constitution, the 2010, and here is another amendment to strengthen those counties, and then the counties say no. This would have been a fallacy. I also more so agree with the professor here about the political alignments which are going to be created by BBI. But I'm not very pessimistic, as a professor wanted to put it here, about the economy. Amongst those leaders that you are seeing, there is Honorable Musalia there, who's always been talking about the economy. It is my thought going forward, therefore, that amongst them, if they pick the right flag bearer, talking about economy, who is the Musalia, who is in that group, then there could be light at the end of the tunnel. Have the BBI and at the same time also turn around the economy, because for sure, the economy cannot continue the way it is right now.
Okay, well, we'll definitely get to talk about that in totality, the economic aspect, of course, the burden on the taxpayers Because we've seen a couple of figures being fronted on how expensive it will be to sustain the members of parliament. But irrespective of that, let's cross over to page 2 of the Standard, a story that highlights the new curriculum, and our parents are set to shoulder heavier cash burden in the CBC rollout. And with limited state funding, the parents will play a critical role in paying for their children's education. Now, billions of shillings will be required to prepare basic, tertiary and university institutions in readiness of that anticipated transition to the new curriculum, and the government presently spends about 5 to 6% of its GDP on education, translating to 447 billion for basic to university education. Well, the figures are there. Kasim, you've been on record mentioning how inappropriate it was in terms of that 500 shillings where parents actually had to pay in terms of the new CBC and the examinations on that. What do you make of this, even as a task force analysis indicates that donor funding and private sector contributions are inadequate?
I think this is the same problem we'll be having over and over again. One, we agree that it is high time we change to competency-based, which is basically trying to identify different talents apart from the normal maths, physics, chemistry, and the normal subject. That was okay. But just as the intention was good when we left the original system to 844, implementation became a problem, and we literally went back to the same academic process, apart from the fact that you are saying now we are in 844. With this kind of rollout, then I'm seeing also the same problem coming back, whereby we'll be saying now it's a CBC with the 633, whatever, but in reality we end up with the same academic curriculum that we are trying to run away with, because who funds? And more so that it has come to the point where now we are talking of the same parents who can't afford. You know, I don't know whether some people have been around this country to know the kind of problems the ordinary mwananchi, the ordinary parent faces, and those are the majority. When one can hardly afford a meal a day. Remember, we are talking at the same time when we are actually rolling out vaccines, we are saying the same parent is supposed to pay. And you know, if it's about 500 shillings this time with a parent with the 7 kids, or 6, then you are talking of thousands for that parent. So I think the government has just to get its act right. Either we say we don't have the money, the treasury doesn't have the money to roll out this thing and say, well, this is a good thing, but can it hold because we don't have the money, or go the full hog and finance this CBC, because ultimately, with the way it's being rolled out now, we might not be able to reap the benefits to attain the attention of the CBC, as it were.
Well, the pressure is definitely being felt, Professor, even as we put it out there that in less than 2 years, the government must provide 1.5 million places for secondary school to cater for the anticipated double intake for learners. Now, it's further pressure, and this might be transferred to parents. Looking at the statistics right here, 53% of funding comes from the central government, 33% from the households. Your take on this?
You know, before we launched this program, first we should have provided those facilities. We kind of put the horse before the carriage, as it were. That not to say, though, the CBC is not important for the country. You see, the United Nations, for very many years, I think for the last 20 years, has been pushing the agenda for education for sustainable development. Education for sustainable development is practical education which allows people to exploit their full potential. So what happened, you know, during my days, we would go to the river, for example, if we are learning 1 to 10, and make those numbers, and touch them, and feel them. This is the idea. Now you have an abstract one written on the board, and you expect our children to understand what that one is supposed to translate to when they are 3 or 4 years. So this education is practical, and is good for the country. But we have not prepared for it, and believe it or not, unfortunately, like Mheshimiwa said, we won't prepare for it because we like the changes, but we don't like the work which actualizes or brings the fruit of those changes home.
But we have the CBC implementers right now placed at the helm of the ministry. Don't you think this might make a difference in terms of proper implementation?
Well, it really won't, because this is just us. This is just Kenyans. They are there, and I can tell you after 2 years we'll be discussing the failures of this system. That I can probably put the money in the you bet on it, because this is just how we are. These are supposed to be experts. This expert shouldn't have been proactive, shouldn't have proposed the provision of necessary facilities before the rolling out of the. They didn't see that. So there is no way along when the train is already moving can they improve the track. Okay. Because what you are asking them to do now, it will be on the track when the train is in motion. So that is not likely going to be a fruit. But hopefully, I wish them well, actually, because if they succeed, that will be very good for the country.
Definitely.
So I wish them well. But I rather that we focus on planning ahead. Because, we like changes in this country. Believe me, we change everything all the time. I think we are very active. That may be a very positive thing. But then we need to plan for these changes and provide for them and plan long term. And that may assist us in the future.
Okay, allow me to include Mark Bichachi in this particular conversation, joining us via way of Zoom. Mark Bichachi, we're just discussing about page 2 on the standard. It touches on the new curriculum implementation and how parents are set to shoulder even a heavier cash burden in the CBC rollout. Some of our panelists seem to think we put the cart before the horse. Do you believe that in terms of implementation of this new curriculum?
I am not a pessimist, as is popular in this country, so I will not start off from a pessimistic perspective, but I will start off from a realistic perspective. I think it must be clear to us that we are a developing country, which means that we have unique challenges. Those challenges are that we mostly have aspirations, rightfully so, that our pockets do not necessarily have the ability to meet. Let me put it in this perspective. If we don't change our curriculum, in a situation where someone in the West is busy dealing with CRISPR technology, the Internet of Things, cryptocurrency, and blockchain, and they're basically changing the world, when we are still teaching things like gravity is a force and not teaching the theory of relativity in high schools, that should tell you that we are behind technology. Now, that put in perspective, we must then find a way of moving forward. Now, as it were, in such a situation, what do? You start running and you fix the ship as it sails. That's just how it has to be. Because either we remain in the dark ages or we begin to move, broken and creaking as we are, towards the future. Now, that does not exempt us from the need to build classrooms, from the need to make education more affordable for our parents and students. It doesn't exempt us from it, but we've got to start somewhere. And for me, I am behind the CBC because I do not believe 844 meets the demands of the growing and changing job market. But also at the same time, I recognize that there are challenges within the CBC, funding being one, execution being another. Yeah. But must it be done? Yes, it must be done. Otherwise, we remain in the dark ages. And just the same way, as we rolled out free primary education, which we enjoy today, it is the same thing. We just have to find a way of making it work. And what needs to happen, and Mheshimiwa is here, I'm glad to see he's back together with Professor, but Mheshimiwa in Parliament needs to make sure that the budgetary allocation towards education is further increased. That's the only thing that we can do.
Mheshimiwa, what do you have to say about that?
Well, I like Bichachi for being, as he calls himself, an optimist. But I think his optimism should also be backed by reality. We are talking of the change from the previous system to 844. With very good intentions, we started by parents, and this was done by parents putting in some blocks as workshops, and they ended up there. I think for all that period, we forgot about the aspect of the technical aspect in primary schools and went back to the normal system. Now we are in CBC. The problem here is the implementation, and unfortunately we are backed by bad history of implementation. I am a parliamentarian. We allocate resources. Even recently, we did allocate resources to the ministry. Remember, parliamentarians just allocate, they legislate, they don't execute. Go outside there and ask yourself, or try to find for yourself where these extra classrooms for the money we allocated for social distancing in primary schools are. Ask yourselves, where is this furniture, the desks which were promised for the students, and yet we allocated money. So here, our problem is securely in execution. Remember, even on this CBC, before it was rolled out, there was a time when the technocrats themselves said it's not yet ready to roll it out. But of course, it was politically incorrect. After only 1 week, if my memory serves me right, it was said that now it is ready. How can an expert give a paper that's not ready and in 1 week it turns around that it is ready? That is where we are now. I'm not against CBC. I'm not against changes. In fact, in management, I would rank myself to be in the category of early adopters when it comes to changes. But for sure, we need to up our game in terms of implementation.
Okay, Professor, even as you add your voice, talk to us about the 100% transition, because that might be an extra burden to finance this particular transition.
Yes, I really like Bichasi's confidence, because he said we don't change, we remain in dark ages, but we are forgetting that America runs an 844 system, and this is superpower. China runs an 844 system, it's a superpower. We have now borrowed the Scandinavian system without the Scandinavian model. And this is the Scandinavian model. You see, the education in Scandinavia is integrated. Okay, if you take a university like Shamas, University of Science and Technology, the president of the university is also the headmaster of the local primary school. The facilities are used in an integrated way. There is no clean separation in between stages in education. There is a fluent interaction between the universities, primaries, and the secondaries. Okay? The other model is that you can't teach in a nursery school or primary school without a master's degree. You can actually teach in a university with no degree at all if you are completely competent in that particular technical area where you are teaching. So we don't have the facilities. We are borrowing a system from people who are perfecting their system. Now, the 100% transition will have to happen because it is not right to deny access. True. In fact, it's a violation of the Constitution to deny access. Question again, like Mheshimiwa is raising, is are we prepared for that in terms of human capital and in terms of the facilities? And that's why I'm saying we do very good. We are wonderful people. We generate beautiful ideas. But then we are not backing these ideas with the prior planning. You can't take a serious thing like change of education system and do it as you walk along. You must walk to a place where you know what it looks like, because you have already planned and put in both the human and the physical resources there.
Okay, that's interesting. Bichachi, your final take on this as we put this matter to rest.
First and foremost, our education has never been well funded, so let's not pretend. Secondly, the people who are implementing the CBC are not incompetent, as we'd like to say. Thirdly, the comparison of 844 with the American 844 is not a fair comparison, because it is also about the content that is therein. For example, if you go to an American school, for example, I studied engineering and I studied instrumentation and control engineering, and I remember very well that by the time we were doing our 5th year, none of us could construct a robot. My classmate, whose father was competent enough to send him to MIT, was building rockets. So the fact of the matter is that our system is broken. We are not at the same level. And the fact is we need to find a way of moving forward. So instead of spending time saying what is missing, perhaps what we need to spend our energies and time doing is fixing that which is missing. And there is a lot missing. I'm not blind to that fact, but I'm saying, missing as it is, the journey of 1,000 miles begins by a single step. So let's take the steps necessary to get to where we are going while we change direction. Let's not wait for the destination and the journey to be perfect before we start traveling.
Interesting. All right, let's cross over to matters touching on politics. And this, even as the ODM grants aspirants more time, it's covered on page 4 of the Standard. And the decision to extend the deadline has raised eyebrows, considering no politician had by yesterday submitted their application. This touching on the hopeful candidates to fly the flag's presidential seat in the 2022 general election. Of course, various names have been fronted: ODM leader Raila Odinga, Mombasa Governor Ali Hassan Joho, Wycliffe Oparanya, the former head of COG. Talk to us about this, Professor. Tactical move by the party as they wait out the BBI process, perhaps?
Yes, a tactical move is about to allow the former Prime Minister to prepare himself because he is going to be the ODM candidate, and the other also pretenders to that throne, they know it. So I don't think they just want to prepare until that he is ready to declare that he is running, and which he will run. Raila Odinga will be in the ballot. Raila Odinga will be a candidate for ODM. And the other people are pretending to be applying. I think they just wanted to look, there's some democracy. But Raila is the candidate.
Well, that's interesting. Democracy within parties is very important, especially ideologies as well. As a member of ANC, Kasim Tandaza, what would you say about the democratic space within the parties? Because many might argue in the case of ODM, and it's been mentioned over and over again, the candidate is Baba Raila Odinga, you know.
Well, it is unfortunate from where I sit that we have parties based on personalities. That is the reality on the ground. And it is against the Political Parties Act, it's against democracy, you can name it, it's against everything. But unfortunately in Kenya, all the political parties belong to some person. This is very unfortunate. That's not the way it's supposed to be. About our sister party, as I correctly said, I'm ANC,
yeah.
We need democracy. In our party, fortunately, we've already had our National Governing Council and picked Honorable His Excellency Musalia Mudavadi as our party leader, our flag bearer going to 2022. I was watching very keenly now in ODM, and I think yesterday in Parliament I was able to talk to some of the party diehards on ODM. I was asking them whether Baba had picked his nomination forms, given that initially today should have been the deadline. Unfortunately not. So we are also keenly watching. I know Senator 001 Sultan Ali Hassan Joho. I am surprised that you are saying he has not returned his papers, but up to last weekend when we had a rally in Lamu, he was very emphatic that he had done all what is required. He's only waiting for the nod for him to be given the certificate. I'm really surprised if it's indeed true that he had not resubmitted his application. But of course, we are keenly watching. If a proper nomination is done and another candidate wins, then I think it will be a big plus to this country in terms of party democracy. I will be keenly watching that to happen in ODM.
Kasim, I also want to engage you on that unity project in the coastal region. We have, just as you've mentioned, Mombasa Governor Ali Hassan Joho fronting himself as an ODM candidate to fly the flag for the presidential race. What does this portend for the quote-unquote, perhaps elusive coast unity? What would you say about this?
Well, I think this is the right time to have that coastal unity. You are looking, initially you are projecting the party leaders who were at State House yesterday, and you wonder, because, as I said, it's unfortunate, but our political parties are basically regionally based. The party leaders more so. Now you are wondering who will be representing cost in that 6 party leaders that you are projecting there. You mentioned Charity, you mentioned Kalonzo, you mentioned, of course, ODM, Raila, you mentioned Musalia. But who is representing cost? This is a whole region with no representation at the highest table. And I think this is what has informed us to realize that whichever way we go approaching 2022, one, we need to have serious representation at the top. And we cannot achieve that if we are not united, if we are not speaking with one voice. That is what has really informed us. It is an idea whose time has come. It's late, but it's an idea whose time has come. I'll be very elated myself to see it happen during my era.
Okay, that's interesting. So which party, in case you form a party, will you still be aligned to ANC or you might jump ship?
You know, about parties, and it's unfortunate that most Kenyans or viewers don't know that we have parties based in cost, you know. So for me, I'm not really a proponent of forming another political party.
All right.
We've had Kadwasili, we've had Shirikisho, we have had CCU, we have had RC. I think there are about 7 political parties whose origin is cost. Of course, we don't have regional parties. They're supposed to be national.
Okay.
So to me, what is most important is to have a unit of purpose and, of course, have representation at the highest table. Otherwise, parties are already there. We can only form another party. It can be the 9th party, 10th party. To me, that is not an issue. That is my line of thinking.
Okay, okay, interesting thoughts. Kasim Tandaza right there, Matuga, Member of Parliament. We're also joined by Mark Bichachi via way of Zoom, as well as Professor Gitile Naituli. Gentlemen, allow me to take a short break. When we come back, we'll continue conversing on these various stories. Remember, we'd also like your contribution on whatever we're discussing right here, touching on the BBI and the various political developments that have happened in the country, bearing in mind the economic situation as it is. Do call in, feel free to do that, and also engage with us via social media. The hashtag to use is Morning Express at KTN News. We'll definitely get to sample your tweets. Make sure you call in. Let's take that short break. We'll be back in a few.